What's up, guys? My name is Stephen Godani with 5 Tool Sports Science right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All right, we got a good video coming for you today. We got trunk timing and power and pitching. This is really big, guys. I think a lot of the research is showing that this is really one of the keys to velocity. And if you watch the entire video, we're going to explain to you guys why. And I think it's going to give you guys some good insight and how to train and how to gain velocity for yourself. All right. Okay. Your trunk is key to pitching velocity. All right. So the trunk, just this bad boy right there, just that mug right there in the center, okay? What the research is finding is research shows trunk power predicts up to 88% of ball velocity in the pros. Okay, so in this study, they looked at the timing and in power and not accounting for the timing of it, but just 88% of the ball velocity variance in professional baseball players was determined from trunk power. So how quickly that trunk can rotate and produce force. That's huge. And I think that that's something that we're seeing more in other forms of research as well. Things like a Proteus, like the Proteus is measuring one of the kings of measuring rotational power. They call it the TrackMan of measuring baseball rotational power. That's what they're seeing as well. It's just this rotational power aspect when explaining pitching velocity is so key. So this study from Aguinaldo and Escamilla, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in 2019 found that 88% of the ball velocity can be explained by trunk power. All right, so proper timing and power of trunk rotation are key to throwing harder and safer. All right. Trunk rotation also influences elbow valgus torque, which is the stress linked to injuries. And that was from Aguinaldo again in 2007. All right. So there's a lot of link of the timing and the power of the trunk. All right. And linking that to both ball velocity and also to health. Okay. So what is trunk timing and power? Uh, Trunk timing is when your trunk starts and finishes rotating during the pitch. All right. So like when we're coming into front foot strike, okay, you're landing at front foot strike. Your pelvis is hopefully opening. You're landing closed. Okay. So once you've started this position of the arm going back and loading up, you're storing tension through the core. You're storing elastic energy all the way up to your arm. Okay. Everything is kind of relaxing into front foot strike. And then once the front foot hits and the shoulders are closed, you start your trunk rotation. Okay. So this is the timing of, oops, turned a little over here. This is the timing of it, of when your trunk rotation starts and then when your trunk rotation finishes. That's the trunk timing. Trunk power is how much energy your torso generates by combining how much twisting force your core produces, which is torque, with how fast the trunk rotates, which is angular velocity. All right, so like when we're looking at a biomechanics, a motion capture report, and you're looking at the kinematic sequence, we're gonna look at angular velocity, which is gonna be how fast your hips are rotating, how fast your trunk is rotating, okay? And then how fast that the arm is going as well, okay? So this is key to look at, all right? So early or late trunk rotation can make or break your velocity and your injury risks. Pro pitchers rotate their trunks later and more explosively than high schoolers, optimizing energy flow. Okay, so what they found, high school guys are rotating that trunk very early, all right? They're landing at front foot strike. The trunk is rotated. We call this early trunk rotation, okay? That does two things. One, it can put more torque on your shoulder and on your elbow, so that's gonna give you a higher chance of injury, okay? And two, it makes you throw slower, okay? So there's a lot of research linking some biomechanical variables, and two of the big ones are going to be like that front leg lead knee extension velocity. They were finding that guys who did that were actually lowering torque in their arm. And then the early trunk rotation. If you're able to keep yourself closed and sequence everything correctly, you will throw the ball harder and you can reduce some of the torque on your arm. Now, it gets a little confusing because as you throw harder, torques do go up, okay? So it's just cut and dry. It's like, oh, well, land closed and we're going to solve the injury epidemic. No, it gets a lot more deep than that, looking at arm strength, looking at a ton of other variables that are leading to the injuries, looking at fatigue and workload are some of the big things. But from a velocity perspective of just landing closed, okay, and creating this good degree of hip to shoulder separation and creating some torque, and then how quickly we can rotate that is highly correlating to ball velocity, okay? Okay, so some of the stuff that you should work on, is going to be emphasizing rotational power in your training. Again, we kind of talked on this, like machines like the Proteus machine is going to be big for this. Flywheels, cable exercises, med balls, water bags, everything that we're doing in training to work on building our rotational power. Some of the big stuff is just having a way to be able to measure it. And the easiest way to measure it, in my opinion, is just using a radar gun and med ball exercises. You can track to see if we're producing some degree of rotational power. Okay. Okay. From the coaching side, teaching pitchers to delay trunk rotation until after front foot contact and avoid early trunk rotation. All right. So that's really the big key of the timing of teaching guys to be able to stay closed. All right. As they're moving down. So we're not opening everything up. All right. And losing all of that core torque. Okay. You're landing close. You're sequencing and timing and coordinating these movements to land in that closed position, all right, with the arm getting into a good cocked position so that it's able to receive the energy from the trunk rotation, all right? But those are gonna be the key things of just getting guys to delay trunk rotation into front foot strike. All right, one coaching variable that people talk about this would be like backwards chaining, which is like teaching the arm path and then teaching the trunk instead of going from, hey, like let's teach lower half first, like let's teach guys how to, you know, drive and use that. I'm not arguing one side or the other. I think that's very subjective to the guy. Some guys might need to learn bottom up first. Some guys might need to learn backwards chaining first. But I do think that there's a lot of credence to using a backwards chaining effect of just getting a guy to land at foot strike with his shoulders closed. I think most of the problems in pitching mechanics and velocity transfer to the mound can be solved if you can just get a guy to land close. It really sounds really simple, but it's like, man, that's one of the big things is just cleaning up that timing. Now, once the timing is cleaned up, what we're learning, like we said, is the 88% of the ball variance for the pros, it wasn't predicated on just the timing, it was the power. It was developing the rotational power to be able to land closed in whatever degree of hip to shoulder separation you're landing in, and then being able to rotate and close that as fast as possible. Some people call that closing the gap. I kind of like to think of it of like slamming a door. All right. So like if the door frame is going to be your hips, like once the hips have rotated and the front leg has gotten stable and your trunk is closed, this has created a strong, stable base. And this is the door, the trunk being the door, it's slamming closed. Okay. So some people call it close the gap. I like to call it slam the door. It's just different ways of looking at it. But essentially, it's just being able to create some level of stretch and then rotate that level of stretch extremely fast. And I think it's the research is showing that this is the key thing to developing pitching power. Okay, or pitching velocity. Excuse me. So use 3D motion capture or video feedback to monitor trunk timing and power. Again, if you're using a motion capture, we can look at kinematic sequence so we can see the timing, and then we can also look at angular velocity of the trunk to see if you are transferring that energy flow efficiently into the baseball. Okay, so that's one of the huge benefits of having motion capture and being able to look at all of the details of the energy flow. But that being said, even with just video feedback, you can very clearly see, especially when you're taking two angles, like a side view angle and a behind the back angle, you can see how much separation that you're landing in. You can see if by the time you're hitting front foot strike, where this shoulder position is at. If you are flying everything open, then you know you've got an energy leak, okay? So you don't need the most advanced tech to see this. You can really look at this with a video camera. So that makes it very accessible to everybody, okay? All right, so to sum it up, your trunk is the engine powering velocity and it can add protection to your elbow, okay? Proper timing of trunk rotation maximizes speed and minimizes energy risk, okay? Building trunk mobility, stability, and power with targeted drills is absolutely beneficial for you to help gain pitching velocity and throw healthier, okay? Pro pitchers show later, more powerful trunk rotation than younger players, okay? And just the final point is just train smart to pitch longer and follow along for more content and more pitching velocity tips and drills and ideas. Hope you guys like it. See y'all later.